Welcome back everyone, this is Aritra and today I'm back here with another video tutorial, and this time it is about how we can create a tiny planet out of a texture map, and it will take just 1 minute. So stick with me and watch the video till the end. And if you're new to my channel, then let me tell you that my channel is all about videography and photography, and if you're interested in these two topics, then please consider subscribing, because I'll come up with more and more video and fun tutorial each week. So without any further ado, let's get started with today's topic, that is creating a planet out of a texture map. So today we are going to do this thing inside After Effects. So you have to have a basic idea about the interface of After Effects. If you don't have, then also it is not a problem, because I'm going to tell you about it a little bit before starting about the tutorial, and I think that will be enough for you to understand, because this tutorial is super easy and also it is super easy to animate the properties. So it will just take 1 minute to understand the effect, and after that you can create a video like this. So we are going to divide the entire process in three parts. The first one is the basics of After Effects and the interface. The second one is creating the elements, and the third one is creating the background, and then we will animate the properties to get the final result. So we are going to start with the interface of After Effects. Here we can see the panels like any other video editing software. At the left we can see there is a project panel, and in the middle we can see there is a composition panel. In the composition panel there are two options, that is creating a new composition from scratch or creating a new composition from a video or a photo or any type of graphic element you are going to use. And after it, in the right you can see that there are different panels that are very useful, that is effects and preset, align, paragraph. These are the panels you'll be using for any type of animation work or any kind of effects or preset. And at the bottom you can see there is a timeline, and it is now empty because there are no videos or photos in our project. And when we'll start working, we can see our photos and videos will be there layer after layer. Other than this, we can see there are normal tools at the left upper corner, and just under it there are some very efficient and useful tools that we'll be using very frequently. So this is the basic interface, and I think this is enough for today's video. So after the basic introduction, we are now going to create the elements. So now we can go to the project panel and double click to get our file manager, and we can import our textures from there, or we can directly go to the files and just drag and drop the files inside our project panels. I downloaded these textures from planetpixelemporium.com, and you can also get your texture from this website or any other website of your choice. After that, we are going to create a new composition, and we are going to keep the full HD settings with a 24 fps timeline. So now our new composition is ready, and we have to create the planets from the texture maps. So we have to drag and drop the textures into our timeline and apply the effect that will transform the texture into a planet. But we can now see that the texture doesn't fit with the composition. So we have to just right click and go to transform, and from there fit to composition width, and the texture will be ready for it. So in the same way we'll prepare the moon map, and then we will go for the effects and preset panel to apply the effect that will make it a planet. Now in the search bar of effects and preset panel, write CC sphere, and one effect will be there. Just drag and drop the effect on the composition or the layer. The result will be same, and once you drop the effect on the composition, then your planet will be ready. And I said earlier that it will take just 1 minute if you know the process how to do it. And in the same way we'll create the moon, and then we'll work for our background. But wait a second, before start working on the background, we have to do a little bit of change in our composition, that is scaling up the earth and scaling down the moon. So select the earth layer here and click S on your keyboard, and the scale property will appear there, and then increase the scale to make it look bigger. And in the same way make this moon smaller. But now we can't see the moon because the earth layer is on the top, and if we just switch off it, then we can see the moon. Now scale down the moon properly, and then selecting it in the composition panel, change its position holding the shift key. Once it is done, you can switch on your earth layer and the moon and earth will be existing side by side. At this position we can work on our background because our composition for animation will be ready. Now notice one thing, if we select any of the layers, one effects control panel is popping out at the place of the project control panel. It shows all the effects applied on that particular layer, and the project panel is just existing side by side. So we'll go back to the effects control panel, and here we can also expand the effects to see all the properties we can animate for a particular layer or a particular element. Now our composition is ready and it is the time to work on the background. Here for the background I downloaded one video from Shutterstock, and you have to just select the video and drag it into the timeline and make sure it stays at the lowermost layer of our sequence. But now we can see, if we zoom out our composition, that the video is too large, so you have to scale it down, or you have to follow the same rule we followed before with the texture, that is fit it to the composition. And now we have to go to the effects and preset panel and search there sunset gradient. This effect will color grade your background video and make it a colorful one. After applying the effect, you go to the effects control panel and you can select the two colors there, and I will suggest you select some bright colors which have a good contrast ratio. So now I realize that our timeline is 30 seconds long, but we don't need 30 seconds. So I just shortened our timeline to 12 seconds to make it more convenient, because I thought it worked for our particular need. Now if you want to trim all the layers to 12-second mark, then put your timeline marker at the 12-second mark and select all the layers, and then hit third bracket on your keyboard, and all your layers will be trimmed at that point. Now finally it is the time to animate our properties. Here we'll select the earth layer and go to the effects control panel. There we'll click on the drop down arrow of the rotation animation, and there we'll find 3-axis rotation. Here in our case we will animate the properties of rotation in Y direction, because that will give us the result we are looking for. One thing I want to mention, that our timeline is 12 seconds and we want to simulate 2 complete rotation of moon around the earth. So in 6 seconds the earth will rotate 27 times, because moon takes 27.3 days to revolve around earth, and also it takes the same time to rotate on its axis, and that is the reason we see the same face of the moon every time. So you have to go to the 6-second mark and type there 27 in case of the rotation of earth, and then come back to the 0 mark of the timeline and put there 0. That means from 0 to 6 seconds it will round 27 times. Similarly, we want to go to the moon layer and animate the properties, but here on the 6-second mark we will write 1 and come back to the 0-second mark, and then we will put 0. So it will create a complete rotation around its own axis within this time period. So for the revolving motion we will create a virtual camera first. To create a camera, you just right click on the layers panel, and then from there new, and then a new camera. Keep the settings as it is and click OK, and it will show you a notification that you want to switch all the layers to 3D layers, because After Effects virtual camera can only recognize 3D layers, so you have to switch all the layers to 3D to make this animation possible. After switching all the layers to 3D layers, we can see at the bottom of the composition panel there is one option that is called active camera. Click on it and go to the custom view 1, and it will show you the 3D space of the virtual camera and the focal distance, and you can animate the camera in any direction like X, Y and Z direction, and according to that we'll select our animation path. For better understanding of the 3D space, you can also switch to multiple views from the composition panel. Like here I am switching to the top view and also the custom view 1, and you can also customize this from the options available there. So now we are going to the camera layer and right click on it. From there we'll go to the options camera, and then we'll create a orbit null from it, and we can see immediately that a null object is created. And if you don't have the concept of a null object, then just remember that it is an entity that has no physical evidence, but it can carry animation itself or control other layers. Like here it will control our camera movement, and you can see from the name that it is an orbit null. That means the camera will orbit around our composition. If you are beginner in After Effects, then it is a tough thing for you, but if you are using After Effects for a good amount of time, then you can clearly understand what I'm talking about. So now we'll go to the null object layer, and from there the transformation options of the null object. There we can see there are 3-axis rotation properties, and if we just scrub to the Y-axis rotation property, then we can see in our custom view 1 window the path the camera is following, and that is clearly the revolving path around our composition, and this animation path of the camera is controlled by the null object, that is the orbit null. Now we'll put our timeline marker to the 6-second mark and go to the y-axis rotation property. There we'll type 1 and come back to the 0 position to write 0. That means from 0 to 6 seconds one complete revolve will be there. But now we can see that our whole composition is moving along with the camera animation, and we don't want our background to move like this. So you have to just switch the 3D background layer to 2D layer and it will be solved. And now if we just scrub to the timeline, we can see only the planets are moving, and we can correct the planetary motions here. Now we just peak whip our earth layer with the null object, then our earth will stay still and not revolve around like it was doing before. If we just switch to the 3D layers, we can see that how the camera is moving and why the earth stands still, because it is following the camera movement. It is always facing the camera, and that's why it looks like it is standing still. On the other hand, if we want to correct the animation of the moon, we will go to the moon layer and then right click on it, and from there we'll go to transform, and from there auto orient. One dialog box will appear, and the third option is orient towards the camera. Select this option and click OK, and your animation will be ready. Now scrub the timeline to see if the animation is okay. Here I think the moon is a little bit bigger, so I can always scale it down and make it perfect. And now if you want to just switch to the 3D layer and see how the animation is working, we can also do that by switching to the custom view 1, and where you can clearly understand what is the camera movement and how the elements are being animated. After it is done, I tweaked the size of the moon a little bit, and now it is the time to add a zoom in effect in the background layer to make it more dynamic. Simply we will go to the 0-second mark and activate the scale property, and then go to the 6-second mark and enter a reasonable value for the scale that can retain good amount of detail without being pixelated. Now if we just play back our animation, we can see it is almost ready, and we have to add a few more effects to make it more engaging. And now to create the background stars, we have to create a solid layer first. A solid layer is a layer which can take up any type of effects and transform into something else. And here we are going to apply one effect on the solid layer that will transform the solid layer into a starburst effect. After creating the solid, you just drag it under all the other layers except the background video layer. So just go to the effects and preset panel and type CC Starburst, and one effect will be there. Just drag and drop it on the solid layer, and yes, your effect is done. But here the density of the stars is too much, and if we just play back, we can also see that the speed of the animation is also not looking great. So you have to tweak the effects a little bit to make it more realistic. So you have to go to the effects control panel, and here we can change different parameters that will control the animation. Like we can change the speed, the size, and also the scatter value that randomize the position of the stars to make it more real. So we can already see that the animation is looking better than before. And now it is the time to apply some color effects on the stars. So just go to the effects and preset panel and search their gradient, and you can see here the effect 4 color gradient. Just drag and drop the effect on the solid layer, and you can see in the effects control panel the parameters, that is the 4 colors that are creating the gradient. Here you should choose your colors very effectively and wisely to make it more interesting and eye-catching. After it is done, if we just play back our animation, it will be almost ready without one single effect that we are going to apply. So go to the effects and preset panel and write CC lens. Drag and drop the effect on the background video layer, and you can see the parameters you can animate in the effects control panel. Here we are going to animate the property size, and that will make the difference. We are going to animate the size between 1 to 6 seconds, and that will stretch the video in such a way that it will look like that the whole space is moving in a 3D space and not like some 2D video. Now we'll play back our final animation, and we can see that the result is pretty good. But one thing I must say, that you can apply many more effects like glow, lights, texture map, etc. to make it more realistic. Here I just discussed about the fundamental animation technique. So that's it for today. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.